We're back with another episode. Call it an Indian Wells check-in, and we have a great friend of the show from Tennis Connected, Amy Lundy Dahl, to join us. Amy, thanks so much for taking the time as we're catching up, and you were just on site for a few days at Indian Wells.
Yeah, it's been great here. The weather's been really good in terms of no rain. There was rain last year, which is extremely rare, but the wind has been kind of swirly on and off. It's been hot some days. It's been cooler some other days. I think the tournament is about to really heat up in terms of temperature. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But overall, the action's been very good.
Yeah, Indian Wells, it does have, I think, the conditions are somewhat unique to this tournament, and you can tell, and I'm sure your experience from watching this, it favors certain players, and it certainly doesn't favor some others. I say that, and we start on the men's side, and I just feel like he could be playing anywhere. Carlos Alcaraz seems to have the ability to do whatever he wants with the tennis ball right now, and he's been, for me, just in full flight all year long, and I don't see any letting up so far at the BNP Paribas Open. Are you getting kind of that same vibe watching Carlitos right now?
Yes, absolutely. I've watched his entire practice session, and I watched one of his matches, and I actually got in a few questions in post-match to him. He is really primed, I think, to do well. Even though the courts have been speeded up a little bit, they're still pretty slow. And it's like a step down or a step up from a clay court almost. So I think that really favors his type of ball, but also his mentality on the court, his resilience, his temperament between courts. He's in the points for the long haul. So he adapts and plays very well here.
Yeah, just obviously we know his skill set is so unbelievably high, all the tools he has on the tennis court. From that mental standpoint, do you think something has changed over the last, I don't know, year and a half, two, in terms of how relaxed, how calm, how confident he seems on the court, and maybe just tactically how in charge he seems to be of all of these matches?
The really interesting thing that happened with Alcaraz, of course, is severing ties with Juan Carlos Ferrero, and everyone was watching how that would go. And I think it's gone really well. I mean, he's undefeated so far, Australian Open champion, another ATP title, and he's basically, I think, coming into his own as a young man. And he's gone from adolescence to adulthood very easily. And he has a lot of confidence right now in who he is as a young man. And that's both on the court and off the court.
What did you take away from just watching that practice session? You know, I've watched some obviously fantastic players in the past practice, and all of these guys do it a little bit differently. I mean, Rafael Nadal was noted for the extreme high intensity. Roger Federer maybe the opposite, kind of cool as a cucumber. What's Carlitos like in practice?
He's fairly relaxed, but, he'll smile, he'll interplay with the crowd a little bit. But in terms of focus, he practiced against Vachereau, and his target, for example, I'll just give you an example. When he was practicing return against Vachereau's serve, and Vachereau's a very good server, he would practice a target of hitting to Vachereau's backhand, which would be the play against a righty with a good forehand. And he hit that same sort of general area of the court again and again and again and again and again. And it didn't matter what type of serve was hit to him. It could have been up the tee. It could have been out wide. He just would go for that same target over and over and over again. So on the surface, he kind of seems relaxed. It's fun. The fans are holding signs. But when you really look at what he's doing and start taking notes on what he's doing, he's practicing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, I know it's certainly impressive, the steps he's taken just over the past several months. He was already unbelievable, and it feels like it's getting better and better. It's funny you call him a young man, and he's in his 20s, and I think of some of these young guns coming up and thinking about Could we have another in the mix challenging Alcaraz, challenging Sinner? And the two names, or maybe there are three names. Jakob Mensik did lose, but two names are still in the tournament as we speak. The left-hander Lerner Tien, who has had a great start to the season, quarterfinals in Australia, semifinals in Delray. He played unbelievable the tail end of last year. For someone who doesn't have maybe that traditionally big game, what makes Lerner so impressive?
Lerner was named for the fact that his mother is a teacher, and they liked the fact that Lerner could be a thing. Well, it really fits, let me tell you. And I'll give you just a little anecdote. I was in Delray Beach, not this past year, but the year before that, and asked Lerner, "What are you working on?" And he said, "I'm really working on my serve." And that was a clear weakness in his game. He was 19 years old. So then I go back to Delray just last month, and I noticed in the numbers that his aces were really ticking up. I'm talking 20 aces in a match, 13 aces in a match. I mean, you can go look for yourself. It's like, wow, this is a guy who was struggling with serve, and people were wondering at 5'11", is he ever going to have a really good serve? Well, Michael Chang and he went to work, and I asked him, like, what did you do? And he said, yeah, I spent a lot of time on this. So he learned, and he's very spongy that way. Now, is he a power server? No, but he's a lefty, and he's starting to become a spot server, which can be every bit as effective, if not more effective, than a power server. So right now, I think kind of the sky's the limit, and he sneaks up on people because he doesn't have that, tremendous height that we're seeing on the ATP Tour. But he certainly has the resilience and the ability to adapt and learn.
Yeah, and look, he defeated fellow lefty and someone I would certainly describe as a big server in Ben Shelton in three sets. Maybe Shelton wasn't 100%, but a type of victory should tell you that, like that, should tell you kind of Lerner seems to have the type of game to challenge, beat top 10 players, and play against kind of the bigger style of tennis that we mostly see on the tour today.
Absolutely. He is a consistent player. He's a player that covers the court exceptionally well. He has an efficiency to his movement. A lot of players go out and they're going all out. They're stretching, they're grinding to cover those wide points, but he seems to anticipate to be there where the ball is going to be hit before the opponent even knows that they're going to hit there. It's really uncanny. And because that, he's able to conserve energy. And, if the opponent knows, wow, this guy is not going to bail out of the point anytime soon, then that can become very daunting.
No question about that. Look, I think this player was probably much more hyped than Lerner Tien, certainly in South America, in João Fonseca. Maybe we did overhype this guy. I don't like to say I personally wasn't claiming he was going to win 20 Grand Slams or anything like that, but he had the makings of someone who you felt like is going to rise to maybe superstardom and be a top 5 player, be someone who's a contender in João Fonseca. And we saw flashes last year where he looked great. We saw some lower stretches where he was struggling to kind of piece it all together. I feel like he's piecing it together at Indian Wells. This is some of the best tennis, probably the best tennis I've seen him play this year for sure. Big time win over Karen Khachanov and dominated Tommy Paul. Have you had a chance to watch João at all? And there was some Fonseca mania, I will say, in Toronto last summer. I don't know if that's carried over to the desert in California.
Yes, absolutely. Everywhere he goes, it's pretty much sold out, standing room only. When he leaves the court, it's a huge rush, and he handles it exceptionally well for such a young guy. I think these conditions suit him very well because the ball bounces very high. I went out there and hit myself. Timing the ball is really tricky because the air is thin, but the court is slow, even though it's been sped up a little this year. When he hits his forehand, he gets up very high. Plus, he has the height already. So he's able to get incredible torque on that. And I think this is just, he's able to get a lot of purchase out of any forehand that he hits here in particular. Now, the reason I think that he's had maybe a dip is it's come out that he has some sort of chronic back
Mhm.
problem that he was born with, like a very slight abnormality, maybe to his spine, that he's going to have to deal with in and out over the course of his career. But he's got more than enough to kind of compensate for that. And again, I think this particular situation with these conditions works very well for him.
Yeah, yeah, well said. World number two, Jannik Sinner. It's almost surprising to me. Well, we could talk about conditions. It's almost surprising to me he hasn't won Indian Wells in the past. You just feel like he's a candidate to win absolutely every hardcourt Masters 1000 event we have. And for his exceptionally high standards, maybe 2026 hasn't kicked off the way he would like to, but I feel like he's back on track, and I enjoyed. It's not rare that we get a little humor from Jannik Sinner, who's kind of a straight-laced guy, but asked in a press conference what's one thing he doesn't love about being a professional tennis player, to not self-deprecating, but answer that he's not so much fond of the press conferences themselves. I don't know. Jannik seems like in a light, relaxed mood, which could be a sign that the rest of the tour could be in a little bit of danger the next few months.
Absolutely. The conditions, I mean, Sinner can play well in any conditions.
Mhm.
These, I think, also favor him. And he's a major contender to win this year, I think. I'll kind of jump ahead. One of your questions to me before we started recording was, who do you think is off to the best start in this tournament? And
Mhm.
my answer would be Sinner
Yeah.
on the men's side. And I just found out yesterday that his family or his father has a small place here. So he feels very comfortable. It's almost like, he can go home and relax. And, I didn't pick him pre-tournament, but maybe I should have.
Do you think he was flustered at all by that loss to Djokovic in Australia? Did he need a little more time to shake that off, or like what type of guy do you think he is, kind of processing a tough loss?
Probably better than almost anyone on tour. I don't think it would bother him that much. If you really look at that match, he won more points.
Yeah.
He played situationally very well. He played offensively very well. He served well. Sometimes it just doesn't go your way. And when you lose to the GOAT, I think you can chalk that one up to just wasn't my day. And I think, him better than anyone else to do that.
No doubt. One more question on the men's side. Felix Auger-Aliassime, Australia was disappointing for him. Since then, I feel like he's looked fantastic, and he had a great month of February. Picked up a title in Montpellier, had another final in Rotterdam, just trending up. Beats his friend Gabriel Diallo coming from a set behind. Gave that send off to Gal Monfils, who played his final match here at Indian Wells. You've always been high on Felix on this show. This is why we always invite you back, Amy, is you're such a big Auger-Aliassime fan. I feel like I'm hoping something changed for him in the summer at the U.S. Open, because when he plays in that clinical way with the serve +1, dominating the court with his forehand, he really looks like a bona fide kind of top 8, top 5 guy to me.
Totally. And he's top 10 now, so he's earned it. I am a fan of his. I'm also a fan of Diallo, by the way. And I was at that match. Brilliant match. Really hard fought. Again, as you mentioned, two friends that know each other very well. And because they're both sort of power baseliners, it's easy to look at those two and see the similarities. But actually, Diallo is starting to develop into a slightly different kind of player. I think he wants to come forward more than Felix does. And he tried yesterday, and it just didn't work out. He wasn't executing the volleys to the spots, but if he keeps doing it, he'll get it.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Felix's game is already developed, and something you may not have seen in that match, I think, is Felix's defense. in fact, I looked at something that the ATP calls steal, which is your steal percentage is when the other guy looks like he's going to win the point and is in control, and you steal the point. And in that category, Auger-Aliassime was sky high in that match, much higher than Diallo was. So, it might have looked like a power battle, but it was actually Felix's defense that won him the match.
Yeah, we know how incredibly athletic he is as well. And yeah, look, it's showing. We'll see if he keeps it going in Indian Wells. I want to talk on the women's field. And look, I mean, there are a lot of big stars here. The story, at least for me, over these first few days, and we haven't talked about her enough on this show. I've been so impressed by Alex Eala, not just the player she is, the person she is. And this was sort of making the round on International Women's Day, the great and kind words she shared, firstly after her match to Coco Gauff, to her mom. Eala is such a presence on, off the court. She has all the makings of a superstar for me. And, she's still so early on in her career. It's really impressive to watch.
She's another one that gets absolutely mobbed everywhere she goes, and she's handling that so well, because I've seen many players not handle that very well. And the one thing that she can work on is her serve, but in a slower condition like this, it's mitigated a little bit. So, she can out rally almost anyone. And yeah, those were very kind words for Coco Gauff, who was injured.
Yeah, and just her tenacity on the court. She, in certain respects, she reminds me of Leylah Fernandez, but she's been a lot more consistent, honestly, than our Canadian Leylah Fernandez. So kudos to her. Look, there are a lot of favorites who could win on the women's side. Who stood out to you, sort of in the early going, who's looked very impressive in particular?
I think Swiatek has looked really good. I got to talk to her briefly after her match against Kayla Day, in which she won the first set 6-0, and the second set she had to come back from 1-5 down. Okay, so that's we're so used to Iga just steamrolling and playing so well when she's ahead in the score. And I mentioned to her in press, in the last 6 months, you've done this twice now, come back from 1-5 down in a set. She did it in the US Open. And, it's something I think she's really developing, that resilience, that confidence to know the score doesn't matter. I'm going to stay in the point, and I know that I have the tools to come back and win this. And that's pretty much what she said.
Yeah, no, that's impressive. Iga was my pick to win at the start of the tournament. Do you get a feeling like she's getting a little bit slept on compared to a couple of the other big names outside of clay? I feel like we've, when we're on that hardcore conversation, it's sort of Sabalenka, Rybakina leading the charge.
Here she's slept on because she is a former champion here, and with the clay-like conditions, I would think that she would be heavily favored, here to win.
Yeah. Victoria Mboko, I mean, I mentioned Felix has done great. I think our best Canadian of the year, without a doubt, has been Vicky. She's been fantastic. She did great in Australia, made a finals in Doha, and continues to trend up. And I thought she was really clinical in this victory over Anna Kalinskaya as well just the other night. Did you have a chance at all to catch Mboko play? You're nodding your head. What were your thoughts?
I also talked to her. I got lucky.
Fantastic.
Yeah, she's in the right place at the right time.
Amazing.
And in fact, I talked to her about fans, Canadian fans, many of whom come down here, vacation down here, fly the flag, all that. She loves it. She said it was almost like a home match.
Wow.
So yeah, she said on the flight down, she thinks that pretty much everybody on her flight from wherever she was coming from was from Canada.
No.
So it was great. It was great. I think it's interesting with players like her. Some players get really fired up on the court. Some players are very cool as a cucumber. It really doesn't matter what your temperament on the court is. It's, can you lean into that temperament? And she's somebody who does that very well. And her game is developing. I mean, it's not even fully developed yet, but she's climbing up the rankings. I mean, it's really exciting.
Yeah, no, you make a fantastic point because, I mean, look at the dichotomy between an Mboko on the court, a Rybakina on the court, and our world number one, Aryna Sabalenka, who's so fiery, loud, boisterous, kind of emotional, and she leans into that for a lot of her success. And for Mboko, she's what we saw, particularly in Montreal last summer. The number of times she lost the opening set or she was trailing, and being able to kind of trust to stay in the moment mentally and stay calm has led her to so much success. And as you said, I mean, it feels like she's getting better like month by month as I watch her.
Yes. And I think the serve is continuing to develop, particularly on her spots and her different spins that she's using. It's only going to go up from here as she gains experience.
I agree with you. Did you have a pick on the women's side? I want to hear that one.
I'm trying to remember. I wrote the preview so long ago. I think I picked Rybakina.
Okay.
And she's still in the tournament. So, yes.
Definitely a contender to watch. Sleeper pick as well. I shouldn't say sleeper pick. Jessica Pegula is playing great.
I
feel like she's been playing so well all year, and tactically, one of the best players, I think, on the women's side right now. So, for sure.
Yes, and she's in a really good headspace, and her backhand is just a nightmare to deal with. And consistency. And, if you can, stay in these rallies and frustrate your opponent, throw up the defensive lob when you need to, you're just the power players like Sabalenka and Rybakina, you're just going to frustrate them.
100%. Throw them out of rhythm. You're not going to beat them at their own game. That's for sure.
Exactly.
Amy, it's always a pleasure having you on. I'm glad you got to spend a few days in the desert and enjoy the tennis at Indian Wells, and also thrilled you got to chat with our Canadian Vicky. So that's great. Safe travels back when you head back home, and thanks so much as always for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure. Anytime. Thanks.
You're welcome. Guys, you've been listening to Watching Matchpoint Canada. We will talk to you next time. Thank you guys so much for watching us at Matchpoint Canada. If you like our work, follow along, hit the subscribe button below.